Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Flip Flop Family podcast. I'm Xylene. It's wonderful to be here. I hope you have had an amazing week. If you are a parent or you are just in charge of children, perhaps you have got to the end of half term and you've just dropped your kids to school and you're like, Hallelujah. See you later. Won't see you for 7 hours. Or maybe you just missed them already. Whichever one you are, thank you for being here. It's lovely talking to you. It is the end of our half term, but only one has gone to school today and the other one starts on Tuesday. But it's been a really nice end to the week with the gorgeous weather. I hope you managed to enjoy it if you are in the UK. We were actually at a wedding near Portsmouth in a place called Gosport. We made the most of the weekend and went down a couple of days earlier to spend time with family and just enjoy this lovely time. We absolutely love a good wedding. And it really feels like we just haven't been to any for a while. You know, I started to think that perhaps people don't get married anymore. Do you feel that way? I don't know. I definitely feel like people just don't get married anymore. We haven't been to one in so long, and now we actually have two this year. One that we've just had and another one at Christmas, before Christmas in December. But this wedding was really lovely because, as I said, it was in Gosport. And it was overlooking the Solent, which is a strait between the Isle of Wight and mainland Great Britain. So being able to see the water sort of just behind like a row of trees was so beautiful. The sun was shining, the Pimm's was flowing, and there was a whole setup outside on the lawn for the actual ceremony. As our cousin patiently waited for his bride to come down the aisle, it really brought back memories. Ben and I kept sharing glances and smiling over Zach's head because I actually made Ben wait 45 minutes at the altar. We got married in a Catholic church and he was waiting and sweating, wondering why I wasn't there and if I was going to turn up. But I didn't just sort of make him wait for no reason. Unfortunately, there was a huge mishap on our wedding day, and the cars, the limos that had my dadima, which means my dad's mum, in it, who, let me add, was like 90 and had come over all the way from Vancouver to be at my wedding. They basically took her to the reception venue instead of the church. And the reception venue was just under an hour away from the church. So I was obviously absolutely distraught and just stalling the ceremony for as long as I could, because it wasn't just my daddy ma, it was also a lot of close family who had flown in from Canada and America to be there for my special day. And I was just so gutted that this had happened, and I couldn't hold out any longer because the father of the church was like, I have another wedding and I need to sort of get on with it. But that's why I kept Ben waiting. But this wedding, the bride only kept our cousin waiting for a couple of minutes. So it wasn't too bad. But it was really, really nice. There was a gorgeous little flower girl who's Ben's goddaughter, and a very handsome page boy who was getting up to all sorts of mischief with Zach. Put them together and it was absolute mayhem. But it was a beautiful wedding, such a lovely day, and like I said, it's marked a really nice end to the week. But it really has got me thinking about marriage and weddings, and it seems that statistically there has been a notable decline in marriage in the UK. So in 1972 there was 480,000 marriages recorded. And in 2019, that dropped to 250,000. And the projections are that by 2050, it would have dropped to 175,000. So that's an absolutely humongous drop in marriages. And it's anticipated that by that time, only 3 in 10 people will be married, as opposed to 7 in 10 that were married in the 70s. So I am right. People just aren't getting married as much as they used to, and we just don't get to attend as many weddings. I think this trend probably reflects societal shifts and changing personal preferences. Like, there's been a complete rise in cohabitation, and obviously there's the economic considerations as well. Like, we had 300 people at our wedding. It cost so much money, but that was nearly 16 years ago. Now that would have tripled, quadrupled, because everything is so much more expensive now. And because of that, it seems that couples are prioritizing other financial goals like buying a house, maybe using that wedding fund as a deposit instead of really for one big party, because you can get married. You don't necessarily have to have a wedding, but it seems that marriages on the whole are on the decline, and young adults are spending a lot more time still living with their parents. So that might be another reason. Like if you haven't moved out, you may not want to, and you you can't afford to sort of have your own place, you probably wouldn't want to get married. I know that in our culture, a lot of people do get married and live with like the in-laws for a while they're saving up for a house, and that seems to be a really good way to be able to get married and also save money. But that isn't obviously for everyone. I know there's probably some people are listening that are thinking, hell to the no, I would never live with my in-laws, as it would probably end in divorce very quickly. I think cohabiting is definitely one of the reasons why people don't get married as much, because once you already live with someone, you're living that kind of married life already, just without the piece of paper. I actually got married really young, I think, if you look at it by today's standards. I was only 26 and Ben was 29 when we got married, and all of his kind of friends were getting married around that age, or maybe even younger. But all my friends down in sort of the northwest of London, they only got married sort of in the last 5-10 years, I would say. So they got married later and had children later. But I guess I would say that Ben and I were brought up with very traditional values, in a sense that, you get married, you don't just cohabit, not having children out of wedlock, all that kind of thing. And I don't know whether those were my opinions as well when we got married, or whether it was just because that's how I was brought up, and so then that's what I ended up thinking. But thankfully, it's been wonderful, and I wanted to get married and didn't obviously think I was too young at the time. I mean, you never think you're too young, do you? When you want to go and do something. Emiliana thinks she's old enough to go and, live on her own. So, and she's not even 13 yet. But I just think that nowadays, people are generally doing things a lot later, and there seems to be less of a sort of urgency as well to pop out babies. People are also having children later, so everything has just moved on a bit. As women, we have a lot more rights. We can do so much more things, and in general, there is a lot more equality. And sometimes I think as a woman, when you get married, it almost feels like you can't do as much as you did before, especially if you have children straight away, just because of the demands on women. I know that a lot of men are great dads, but there are some things that only women can do. And so that can also kind of hold you back a bit if you do end up sort of getting married and then having children. I just think as women, we are a lot more freer now, and we have to be very thankful that we have women's rights and that we are able to do so much more, and we are free and we can fly, and it's just great to be a woman in this century. It's interesting to know people's takes on marriage, and I am quite old-fashioned, I would say, and I think it is just beautiful to be married. Me and Ben will be celebrating 16 years this year, hopefully, in August, and I've loved being married. And I think because we got married so young, it was like we were at uni and we were like roommates at uni, just having fun. We were still partying. Everyone used to come around to our house and have drinks before we went out, and then all the taxis would appear. We used to lie in and watch X Factor like reruns in the mornings on Sundays after a late night out, and we used to have our little date nights, and I used to make us a roast on the Sunday, and we just go to the gym together. Like we had so much fun together, also after we had children. But we had an amazing time as newlyweds, and of course the dynamics of our marriage has just kept on changing with all the adventures that we've had, as well as our 2 children. But I feel that when you get married, it's like an extra layer of commitment. Again, this is just my view, and not everyone will agree with my view, but I look at it as a bit like when you just have a pay-as-you-go membership at the gym, or perhaps you've been given a whole heap of guest passes, and you just go now and you go then because that's kind of, you've got these passes and you're not tied down to anything. But when you become a member and you subscribe and you're paying every single month to be a member, you will generally go more because you've committed to that gym membership. And that is kind of how I look at marriage. And I just feel that when you get married, and you people may say it's just a piece of paper, but I really do believe in the vows. And because Ben's Catholic and I'm a Smiley Muslim, we actually ended up having a full-on Catholic church wedding by day. You know, white dresses, tails, the old-fashioned car. It was a real kind of like picture in terms of like a white wedding, and it was really lovely to have it. And we had the registry within the signing of the register within church, and then we had a whole shift to like the Indian vibes, and I had a lehenga on. A lehenga, if you don't know, is like an Indian dress. It was like a top and a skirt. It was covered in Swarovski crystals, and Ben put a sherwani on, which is like an Indian suit, and all his groomsmen had matching sherwanis, and all my bridesmaids had matching saris on, and it was beautiful. And we got to have like a ceremony for me, and of course the official ceremony for Ben. But in saying those vows, and you know, in sickness and health, and vowing to sort of bring up our children in both faiths, like we both took that really seriously, and we have both completely stuck by that. And I just think that by doing that and sort of saying those vows to each other and really meaning them, I just feel that it's just that extra layer of commitment. And that's just how I feel about marriage. But of course, it isn't for everyone. But even if you don't get married, I think you should have like a big party because I really miss attending weddings, and I really loved this wedding. And the really cool thing about my cousin's wedding over the weekend was the entertainment. So I know that depending on your kind of people, some people are more outgoing and they love dancing and they like getting up, and others are more reserved and they rather watch, and that is of course totally fine. But he had this guy come in, and it looked like he was working at the hotel, so he had this top on that's part of the uniform, and he basically fell on the floor, and all the uncles like got up to help him because they thought he had like a heart attack or something. And then he jumped up with like the mic and was like, that got your attention, and then full on went into song, like singing his heart out. And he did like 3 or 4 iconic songs, and I'm talking about like standing on chairs, singing. He got us all to pick up our napkins, and we were like swirling them in the air like flags. He was like putting the mic in front of the kids so that they could sing part of the songs. Like, it was crazy. Like, we had just finished dessert and I fancied a cup of tea, and I actually thought he worked there. So I asked him where the tea was, and he told me, and he should have told me to wait because I feel like I missed the beginning. So me and Ben went off to go and make our chai. And then on the way back, it's like everything had changed from like calm eating dessert to like party mode. And it was so fun. And I feel like anyone getting married should have that, because there is nothing like having a live singer to sort of bring that energy and to get everybody into party mode, especially if you have a really long day and it can kind of get to a bit of a lull at one point. But it was fantastic. It was a wonderful weekend, and being at a wedding when you are married, or just with someone that you love if you're not married, it makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. And I got to write in the card, and I haven't given anyone wedding advice for a long time, and it was really interesting because the lady officiating the wedding gave really similar advice to what I feel like I always give newlyweds. And that was, of course, there's the usual thing, like don't go to bed angry with each other. Like if you've had an argument, a simple sort of I love you or a little sort of kiss on the cheek will soften the blow for the morning. It will make things a little bit easier. But the advice that I feel like my advice has evolved as I've been married for a long time now, that used to be my advice, but my advice is now to always have time for each other when you come home. So when you've come home from work or whatever you do, having a moment to actually say, hi, how are you? Giving your other half a hug or a kiss or a fist pump or a high five or whatever it is that you do that feels normal as a couple, and asking them like, how was your day? But not just saying it because, you're in a bit of a routine. Oh, hi, how are you? How was your day? But actually caring and listening, because I just think that having that moment for each other is really important and really special. And in a fast-paced life, it can also remind your loved one that you do still care. And lastly, always offer them a cup of tea. That would be my last bit of advice. Ben, whenever I come through the door, Ben's always like, babe, sit down, I'll make you a cup of tea. And that just makes you feel loved, Cup of tea always makes you feel loved, doesn't it? On our long drive to Portsmouth over the weekend, I got into my book. Now, I haven't finished reading it, but I still would like to give it as my book of the week. It was a gift for me for my birthday, and it is by an author called Elif Shafak, and you may have already read it. I think it is quite a popular book. It's an international bestseller, and it's called The 40 Rules of Love. And it is really good. I'm loving it. I have to say the words are really tiny, so I feel like I'm going to be here a long time because I'm not a very fast reader, but I really love it so far. And it does start off being about a family, husband and wife with kids, and it's a quest infused with Sufi mysticism and verse. If you're into spirituality and personal growth, I would say that this book is totally for you. It starts off where the main character, Ella Rubinstein, she reads a manuscript titled Sweet Blasphemy, and it's written by Aziz Sahara, who tells the story of this 13th century poet, Rumi, and his transformative relationship with a wandering dervish, the Shams of Tabriz. And we talked about swirling dervishes actually on a previous podcast, but Ella basically becomes totally absorbed by this story and then begins corresponding with Aziz and finds herself sort of questioning her own life, beliefs, and of course, meaning of love. So I would definitely pick it up and have a read if it sounds like that is your vibe. I love Rumi, and I think it's really interesting, the sort of Sufi philosophy within the book. And I'm pretty sure that by the time I get to the end of this, we'll probably end up doing a podcast on the 40 Rules of Love, of which I have not come up against yet. So book of the week, the 40 Rules of Love. On to my savvy tip of the week. You may have already come across this and you may be thinking, Zylene, you have jumped on this bandwagon far too late. And I must admit, I have seen this shop around, but I just haven't had the chance to go in one. And where we were staying in Gosport, there was actually a Home Bargains really nearby. And so I actually popped in as we had time in the morning, and I was really impressed. I managed to pick up so many bits and bobs. I was on a bit of a time frame, so I've now had a quick search to see if there's one near me, and there is. And check this, if there isn't one near you, you can actually shop online as well. They claim to give you top brands at bottom prices. So check it out, Home Savers. Now that really sounded like a commercial, didn't it? But no, we are not sponsored as yet. The film of the week that we would recommend for you is a biographical film on Netflix, and it goes by the name of Harriet. It is really good. It takes the actress Harriet Tubman through harrowing escape from slavery, and then she risks her life to lead others to freedom via the Underground Railroad. I love it because it's a true story, and it is just amazing what women can do when they are very passionate and very moved by the situation that they're in, and when they have so much empathy for others. Women can be totally unstoppable, and this Miss Harriet Tubman was totally unstoppable, and like I said, a true story. It was actually came out in 2019. It's not brand new, but it's on Netflix at the moment, and it's PG-13, and Ben and I really enjoyed watching it and found it really empowering. So if you fancy watching something along those lines, have a look at Harriet on Netflix. The song of the week is something that we were listening to in the car, and it is by Ezra Collective featuring Yasmin Lacey. It's called God Gave Me Feet for Dancing, which I think is perfectly apt after all the dancing that we did last night. Seriously, I said to Ben that his legs need to win an award. I don't know how he does these sort of moves with his legs. I don't know how he can still do a lot of the dancing that he does, given that we are a bit older, but he's just a really good dancer, and he was shaking a leg and he was loving it last night, and my feet were absolutely killing, but as the song says, God gave me feet for dancing, so I shall dance. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode of the Flip Flop Family podcast. Remember that there are loads and loads. You can actually click on our podcast and scroll and perhaps scroll again. That's how many there are. So please do check them out. Remember, if you do enjoy what you're hearing, it would be wonderful if you would just share it, even with one person, and let them know about what we are doing on this podcast. Of course, we would love the conversation to continue. If you have views on marriage, or perhaps you totally disagree with what I'm saying, I would love to hear from you. Our Instagram page is the Flip Flop Family. Please do add us and chat with us. We can have messages and talk about it. It's always really interesting to hear other people's perspectives. Remember that we release episodes every single week, and you can find us on all streaming platforms. And our song of the week can also be found on Spotify and Apple if you just search the Flip Flop Family Song of the Week. I hope you have an amazing week ahead, and we shall chat again soon. I'm Xylene, signing off. Bye bye.